bill does not prevent workers from suing for damages if their company fails to keep their work environment safe. This bill really only affects sanctions and issues of prior restraint. Won't businesses ignore regulations until told otherwise?
Gentleman's time has expired.
Okay, thank you very much.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for 5 minutes. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I stand here today in absolute disappointment with this body and the total lack of Republican leadership. I can't even begin to express the disappointment I have with the GOP leaders who choose to play a game of chicken rather than do something to save 2 million American jobs. After more than 20 years of watching my father serve the 10th Congressional District of New Jersey, the district that he loved, I came here to Washington to do the same. I came down to get to work, to dig in, to get my hands dirty, and to help resolve the pressing issues that will ruin this country if ignored. As we speak, people are terrified. And if they aren't terrified, it's because they've stopped listening to the partisan bickering. But make no mistake, these cuts will be unimaginable to people across the country and people across New Jersey's 10th district. So I ask my colleagues, why are we here again? Why? We've played this game before, heard this tune, danced this depressing musical number before. It's like I'm Bill Murray in the movie Groundhog Day, where every morning I wake up hoping it's a new day, and every morning I wake up to the same maddening song. It's the song of a failed Republican leadership doing absolutely nothing, nothing all over again. Talk about a do-nothing Congress. In the 112th Congress, passed just 283 bills, and 22% of them were bills to name post offices, courthouses, and other projects. So when you break it down, Congress really only voted to pass 2 bills a week. 2 bills a week. We can do better than this, but we need to work together. When I speak to my fellow Democrat members, there is a frustration. They're frustrated because we've seen the pain and fear in the people we speak to back home. There's frustration because we are ready to work. That's why I was sent here. That's what I was sent here to do. So let's stop the nonsense and let's get to work. The effects of sequestration are real. Maybe people don't understand what the word sequestration means, but when they start to lose vital services that they need to live, it is going to devastate working families, the middle class, and the vulnerable in my district. In New Jersey alone, more than 40,000 people could lose their jobs. New Jersey will lose $17 million in funding for teachers, aides, and staff who help disabled children. 1,300 children in New Jersey will be cut from Head Start. 11,000 civilian Department of Defense employees will be furloughed. Senior Meals on Wheels programs will lose nearly $500,000 in funding in New Jersey, possibly the only meal they have for the day. And funds will be slashed for victims of domestic violence, resulting in 700 victims not receiving the care that they need to survive. Right now, Democrats have a plan on the table that will stop sequestration and start reducing the deficit in a balanced way. It's a plan that cuts spending responsibly, closes corporate tax loopholes, protects the most vulnerable, and ensures millionaires pay their fair share. And you know what? More than 76% of the American people support a balanced plan. Including today, we have 3 days to go and $85 billion in automatic deep spending cuts on the chopping block. It's time for Washington to stop playing games, stop pointing fingers, and do what's right by the American people. That's what the American people expect, and quite frankly, that's what they deserve. Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to bring H.R. 699, the Stop the Violent Sequester Jobs Loss Now Act, to the floor.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3, 2013, the House in session solely for the purpose of conducting morning hour debate. Therefore, the gentleman's request cannot be entertained.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm deeply saddened for the American people that we are unable to bring this bill to the floor and stop the loss of 2 million American jobs. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for 5 minutes. Thank you, Earl.
The sequester drama that we are watching play out this week is exactly why I voted against the New Year's Day budget package. 2 months ago, all the forces were aligned to force a bigger agreement. But we set our sights too low, it generated too little revenue, and most fundamentally, there was not a fundamental reform in the way that we do business. We merely put off the fiscal cliff in order to not have one, but we now have not one, not two, but 3 such dramas between now and next summer. Friday's the sequestration, March 27th, the continuing resolution runs out, and sometime this summer, the Treasury Department is going to run out of capacity to keep juggling the national debt, and we face that drama all over again. Actually, there's a 4th cliff, if you count the so-called dairy cliff, which will potentially double milk prices in September. The path forward is to focus on areas of agreement, potentially between the right and the left. A great place to start is health care. Reform is taking place around the country, and in fact nowhere is it more exciting and promising than what is happening in Oregon, where we're working in concert with the implementation of the Health Care Reform Act to squeeze out waste and inefficiency. We are working to reward value instead of volume. And the federal government has bet $1.9 billion that we'll be able to reduce health care inflation at least 2% a year and maintain quality. Helping people stay well rather than paying people for disease and illness is a logical way to go. After all, the Affordable Care Act embedded every one of these major reforms that used to be bipartisan, that had been implemented by business, health care plans in red states and blue states, that had been advocated by Democratic and Republican governors alike, and indeed supported by members of the House and Senate in both parties. We ought to, instead of fighting health care reform, we ought to accelerate it. If we can deliver on the Oregon promise, it in and of itself will save more money nationally over the next 10 years than we're arguing about with the sequestration. We also must address the huge budget challenges that are facing the Pentagon, in large measure because neither it nor Congress has insisted on change and indeed in some cases has institutionalized bad decisions. We haven't scaled back our horribly expensive, outmoded, inefficient nuclear deterrent program, maintaining perhaps 8–10 times what we need for actual deterrence today with 3 massive, expensive, redundant delivery systems that are out of sync with today's threats. We haven't used nuclear weapons for the last 68 years. We probably won't use them for the next 68 years, and there is no imaginable circumstance when we would use even a fraction of what we have. And the cost for that, conservatively, is over 2/3 of $1 trillion over the next 10 years. We've never come to grips with the cost of an all-volunteer Army. Now, our forces are significantly above what we had a decade earlier when we were supposedly staffed to fight 2 wars simultaneously. We need to scale that down, to refocus it, to supplement reductions in troop levels with beefed up support to the National Guard, which is far more cost-effective and easier on our troops. We need to reform our bloated, fossilized, outdated Farm Bill to spend less, help more farmers and the environment, and show that we can rise above politics and habits to have a farm program for this century, not 1949. The majority of farmers and ranchers in the United States get nothing. The majority of the support flows to the top 10% who don't need it at all, and it distorts our international trade posture. The final looming threat is the dysfunction, unfairness, and inefficiency of our tax system. It costs us huge sums to administer. It leaks hundreds of billions of dollars in tax avoidance, evasion, and mistake, to say nothing of misplaced incentives, and it costs over $160 billion a year to administer. Now, clearly there's a need for more revenue in a growing and aging population. But fundamentally, we need a new broad base of support that will help us pay the transition necessary for a reformed system. Madam Speaker, this is not rocket science. This is within our capacity. We ought to get started on it now.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Muffe, for 5 minutes. Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since becoming Central New York's new representative, I have met with over 100 business owners and development leaders in my community. I have visited the universities, the hospitals, the factories, the public schools, and I've met with local leaders in law enforcement and public safety. The one message I keep hearing throughout my district is that we need to work together to grow and strengthen our middle class and create jobs. Work together. Now, more than ever, that's what Congress and the President needs to do. That's what the American people and my constituents overwhelmingly want. If people do not come to the table and work together by March 1st, this Friday, more than 70,000 jobs are at risk in my state alone. At Hancock Air Base, New York National Guard employees, 280 of them are at risk. 280 National Guard employees at the 174th Attack Wing will be furloughed, notwithstanding the fact that this unit is flying missions in Afghanistan as we debate these issues. Automatic spending cuts will force the FAA to cut air traffic controller shifts and potentially eliminate overnight shifts at the Syracuse Hancock International Airport and other upstate New York airports. Cuts will also force TSA to cut back on personnel, increasing wait times by an hour or more at many airports. This will have a chilling effect on a still fragile economic recovery. 70,000 New York college students will lose tuition assistance, and across the country, 70,000 deserving children will lose Head Start. Now, to keep America strong, we are told that we need to make sure for our national security and our economy that we improve STEM education, science, and technology. This is doing the opposite. Now, we need to take a balanced approach, trimming where necessary instead of these arbitrary, sweeping cuts that hurt middle-class families. This is not a partisan issue. The Republicans on this floor have spoken about how bad these arbitrary cuts are and how damaging they might be. Our nation needs to get its fiscal house in order, and we need to do it right away, not on the backs of our middle class and seniors, and not at the expense of thousands of jobs. Now, there is a specific plan to do that. It balances revenues, and it balances cuts with revenue increases. And Madam Speaker, I do ask unanimous consent to bring up H.R. 699 with this balanced approach.
To the order of the House of January 3, 2013, the House is in session solely for the purpose of conducting morning hour debate. Therefore, the gentleman's request cannot be entertained.
Well, Madam Speaker, I do understand that, but I do hope that the leadership of this House considers just doing a vote, a regular up or down vote on this or any plan to avoid these arbitrary cuts. Now, we need to institute better programs and methods to root out waste, fraud, and abuse, and ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used most efficiently. There's no question about that. We also need comprehensive tax reform that finds revenues in ways that don't hurt the middle class, like ending the tax loopholes for corporations that ship jobs overseas, and ending the tax breaks for big oil and gas companies. Madam Speaker, our plan is a balanced approach. More spending cuts and modest revenue increases. Now is not the time for partisan politics. With the future of our economy hanging in the balance, we cannot afford inaction. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Negrete McLeod, for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I ask for unanimous consent to address you for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. Today, I urge all of my colleagues to join together to avert the automatic trigger cuts brought forth by the sequester that are scheduled to begin in 2 days. These cuts will hurt small businesses, the military, seniors, and our children. In California, it is estimated that more than 15,000 children will not receive vaccinations for diseases such as measles, whooping cough, and influenza, all because of these automatic trigger cuts. This is unacceptable. In addition, special education services for children with disabilities will see cuts, while over 8,200 low-income children in California will not receive critical early education from Head Start. Children deserve better from their members of Congress. That is why we need a balanced approach to replace sequestration, which includes revenues and spending cuts, thereby ensuring the most vulnerable are not burdened. I therefore ask for unanimous consent to bring forth H.R. 699 to provide balanced deficit reduction.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 3, 2013, the House is in session solely for the purpose of conducting morning hour debate. Therefore, the gentlelady's request cannot be entertained.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back my time.
The gentlelady's time is expired. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess until noon today.
The House coming back at noon to begin work on reauthorizing